It actually provides sort of a triple win. I mean, if you have an insect farm with these black soldier flies, you have sort of an organic waste plant, management plant, so to say. Farmers are struggling with getting enough organic waste in to actually feed to their flies. So what you now see happening at certain markets in Kenya is that actually people get sometimes even roused about who gets the waste from the market, which I find quite fascinating. I mean, and I'm exaggerating now a bit.
Is there, I mean, the black soldier fly gets all the press.
Yeah, true. And the other insects are complaining.
Who's your number two? Welcome to the Beehive, everyone. I am your host, Mark Fonseca Rendeiro. Stay there. And we're back for another edition of the podcast that looks at the projects, the ideas, the people at the Netherlands Food Partnership. We're so glad you could join us. And a reminder that this is a podcast that can be consumed in video. And if you're listening in audio, you didn't see me wave my hands around like I'm framing myself. Anyway, you can follow it via your favorite podcast app. These days, there's so many, so you probably already have one. Go there and look for Welcome to the Beehive and subscribe. That being said, let's get on with the show. Today on the program, I have the great honor, no, privilege, to get to sit across from a gentleman named Ibrahim Pallas. He's a partnership builder. Sometimes I still look up when I'm thinking partnership builder, because, well, they're terms that go together, partnership and builder. We're going to learn more about that. He does it right here at the Netherlands Food Partnership, and I'm very glad, like I said, that he's here today. Hello!
Hi, Mark.
I've known to take a while to get to my hellos.
Yeah, that was very good.
You should see what happens when you get to my front door.
Yeah.
But I'm very glad to have you here today, and we're focusing on, the topic of insects, but the partnership is known as InFeast. If that's not intriguing, I don't know what it is. We're going to get into it. I think to start is a bit this topic, and then I want to get into the partnership. You think that's a good order?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
No, because I don't know, people may come across this conversation and be coming from a certain knowledge of food, of also how their food gets to them, or at least, if you eat an animal, is that too literal? Well, anyway, if you are a person who eats meat, right, how your cattle are raised before they finally get to your store, wherever you buy it. So I think that there's like a certain level of knowledge that people have. And then if you're in the world of food systems, probably a slightly deeper knowledge. But all this to say, I don't know if insect farming is in everybody's sort of go-to, like, oh, let's talk about insect farming. So you're kind of in the underdog, the lesser known, a deep track. That's how I see it. How do you see it?
Oh, thanks for the question. No, and I think it's fair enough. I mean, if we think about agriculture, we tend to think about cows or walking in a pasture, or the farmer hard at work with his hands in the soil. But I think that this is a particular interesting topic because these insects are actually quite interesting creatures, and because in this case we're talking about the black soldier fly. And the funny thing is, and that's also why we find it an interesting topic as Netherlands Food Partnership, it actually provides sort of a triple win in that regard. Because one, apparently these critters are very good in processing organic waste. So it's really sort of a way, I mean, if you have an insect farm with these black soldier flies, we call them BSF for short. Yeah. You have sort of an organic waste plant, management plant, so to say. So it solves already a problem at that end. And then the larvae of these flies can actually provide us a very good, sustainable protein source for animal feed. Because they're very protein rich. Also, science shows that they are also not only like, can they replace it, but they also have very positive health benefits for the animals that eat them, like chickens, pigs. And thirdly, they process this organic waste into what's called frass, but that's sort of an organic fertilizer. So you can then use that on the soil again to improve the soil health. So you really see a benefit in waste management, in alternative proteins and in improved soil health through this organic fertilizer. So you actually have one animal, small animal, but with three very big impact areas that it can have. And that's what really makes it interesting for us and an interesting domain to engage in, especially of this part pioneering bit. And that's also what we like at Netherlands Food Partnership. I mean, we have a lot of partnerships that we support, and there is a lot of course, a lot of things going in terms of food systems, agriculture, food, whatnot. But we also try to look out for those things like, is there a niche somewhere? Are there some pioneers working on some stuff? And does it have potential? And how can we help accelerate that?
Yeah. When you started down the road with this issue to eventually form a partnership, when you looked around, I mean, we should probably talk about that process, but what did you see? And maybe how did you see it? Because I see terms all the time like mapping, consulting stakeholders. I don't know if that's even maybe further down the road on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you initially were still forming the partnership, I think it's interesting to know, like, what does that involve actually doing?
Yeah. No, also fair enough. I think these terms fly around a lot. And what I find difficult from time to time is that they also can really have a different meaning for different people. And when we say them out loud, it feels like, oh yeah, if we keep it this vague, then we're all on the same page. And then when you actually ask people about it, it tends to be totally different. So I think it's a good question to really ask, like, what does that process look like, and what steps do you take there? And also maybe to mention, like, for me, this whole world, this whole domain was also completely new. And that's also what I like about my work here. I don't have to be an expert on the actual content or on the practices, but really on that partnership process. And that also allows you to engage in a lot of different topics that just fascinate you. I mean, 3 years ago, I never heard of this. I haven't seen it. And now I'm like, whoa, this is interesting. And I'm reading articles about it. So I heard my colleague Nina talking before about becoming a seed nerd. It's a bit like that. You tend to learn more and more about a subject that you didn't know before, which is quite nice, I think. But what happened in this case was actually at a certain point, of course, we have a very broad network of stakeholders. But I think it was about 2.5 years ago that I started to feel like, hey, it seems like a lot of our partners are now talking about insect farming. Where does that come from? And it was just, I don't know whether it's a gut feeling or an instinct or just listening carefully. But it was remarkable. Like, hey, this topic wasn't there before. What's happening? So then actually a colleague of mine and I set out to interview some of those partners. Like, hey, why is this the case? What's happening in that domain? What are your ideas? What are you working on? But where does it need to move towards? What are the biggest challenges that you face in getting from A to B? And based on that, we actually had an exchange with stakeholders in Kenya. I think about 50 stakeholders at that. It was an online event, knowledge exchange and stakeholder event, where we, tried to share some knowledge about this topic and on insect farming, BSF farming in this case, but also wanted to invite the stakeholders that are working on that, like, hey, can we set joint priorities on what needs to happen? If we really want to move this forward, if you really, in our case, for example, want to make sure that these insect-based products become a viable alternative for more conventional animal feed ingredients, what are the biggest bottlenecks? What do we need to tackle? So 3 things came out of that. One was basically working on better collaboration in the sector. 2 was making sure that the current insect farmers, a lot of the BSF farmers, have more skills, more tools available to get to a certain quality. And 3, also improve the access to finance. Because that's one of the, almost always one of the big hurdles. But if you looked at that question that I mentioned before, like, how do we get to a point where it's really a viable alternative? A lot of feed producers, animal feed producers told us, oh, we find it an interesting development, but there are certain conditions that we are expecting. And that's normal because they have a business to run. So what they were saying, it needs to be there in sufficient volume. it needs to be of a certain minimum quality that we can be sure of that we always have the right quality for our products. And it has to be available at an affordable price. So that was sort of the challenge that we set out for, like, how can we get to that point? What needs to happen to get there?
Yeah.
That's the question that we had to ask the stakeholders. Those were the bottlenecks that they came up with. And that actually started a journey for us together with the Association for Insect Farming and its Products in Kenya. It's a local association, was already there, relatively small, but they popped up in one of the exploratory studies that we did. And they also expressed, like, we want to take a next step. We are really aiming to be this central association, the central platform in the sector. So that's actually where the journey started, and saying, okay, how can we help build a partnership that can work on these major priorities that were set, and at the same time also help professionalize this association to actually substantiate those things. Because improved sector collaboration, well, if you have a central association in country where stakeholders can convene, get together, but perhaps also jointly advocate for legislation and stuff, then you can give some hands and feet. I think I don't know whether it's also an English proverb, but at least in Dutch.
Give hands and feet.
Give hands and feet to what you actually want to accomplish, and to get out of that vague stuff like, I want to improve this, I want to improve that, but what are we going to concretely do? And that was really the entry point for us, saying, like, hey, let's help these people to make that step, and at the same time also plug in other partners that can help with that and set up the broader agenda.
Yeah. How do you then, I mean, this is, I guess, getting very inside, but how do you then get, so for example, if one of the requirements was that the volume be sufficient so that companies would be interested, how to help that along? What can you do, or as a partnership builder at NFP, or the partnership itself? I mean,
No, that's the thing. I mean, I can't do that much directly. I mean, I can't go to Kenyan insect farms and saying, like, hey guys, you should work like this and then you'll get more. So that's something that we really want to cultivate and get the right partners on board that can help the BSF farmers, hopefully through that association, ideally through that association as a platform, to up their skills, which is also one of those priorities, to make sure that with the same resources or more efficiently produce higher volumes. So process more waste through those BSF, get that out into more larvae, more frass, that then can be used as output products, so to say. We need to get the outputs up. On a quality level, it's about, like, working on standards, making sure that there is a minimum sort of compliance type of way, or maybe through legislation, seeing, like, what standards can you set in the sector to make sure that feed producers get the right quality of product to work with. And how can you then equip the farmers to work along those principles? And that's not something that we are doing as Netherlands Food Partnership or as NFP, but that's really something that we want to bring the partners together for, to have them set the agenda, to let them define what needs to happen, because they just know best what needs to happen. And we're seeing, like, how can we support that process and making sure that all the frogs remain in the wheelbarrow, to use another Dutch proverb.
You're just making these things up. There's no frogs in a wheelbarrow. But I get your point. I think a couple of questions to follow up. I mean, one is, so the example of Kenya, where it kind of all started, but it at this point is beyond just one country. And I find that also interesting, intriguing also in terms of managing that. So Ethiopia also involved. How then does it work really, and what have you seen, maybe that's a better question, when it comes to going beyond one country and including other contexts?
Well, that's two things, I think. One is looking at Ethiopia, the way, the stage of development that the BSF sector is in there is really different from Kenya. It's not as far as the Kenyan sector is. So you're looking at different priorities and different things to work on, but also with different partners, because each context also requires bit of a different approach, organizations that are well rooted in that context. So it becomes sort of a new or a continued search for additional partners.
Yeah.
And there we start again with looking like, hey, what does the sector look like? What does the sector need? And how can we then get the right people together to address those things? So in Ethiopia, I think we are now sort of moving towards Ethiopia because we first wanted to get the basics right in Kenya, so to say. The intention was always to move to the broader East African region, with the association in Kenya either playing a regional role in a couple of years' time. I don't know. Still an option, but that's under development. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next year or in 2 years. Or that we replicate the model to Ethiopia. But that depends. I mean, it depends on what the needs are in Ethiopia, what fits the context. So that's really the stage where we now are in to identify a couple of the front runners on BSF farming in Ethiopia and engaging with them. Like, how can we support you guys the best to also help accelerate the sector in Ethiopia?
Yeah. So we've often, in our previous episodes, which you may have seen, available now, we've often talked about this aspect of the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
And why the Netherlands, we increasingly ask ourselves and answer. But so in this case, it doesn't immediately jump out at me. Sometimes seeds, that one was, I saw it right away because I knew about, some of the history. Dairy, I got it.
Yeah.
Insect farming in the Netherlands.
True. And I wanted to say, aha.
Yeah.
Now I got a good answer. But no, I think to a certain extent, you're right, in the sense that we in the Netherlands have a couple of things that we are quite good at internationally and quite well known for. That is dairy, that is to a certain extent poultry or horticulture. Look at the greenhouses in the Westland. It's amazing what we do there. An insect is not one of the things that you would immediately think of. However, and I'm not necessarily saying that we're front runners in that, but there is already an insect sector in the Netherlands, and there is also an insect branch organization called Phoenix, and actually which is already running for about 10 or 15 years now, I think. And one of the driving forces behind that is a social enterprise called New Generation Nutrition, NGN, and they're also a partner in this partnership. So in this case, it's not necessarily like, from the Netherlands we bring a lot of skills and knowledge on insects, because other countries might have that as well.
Yeah.
What is very interesting, though, is that we here have a Dutch partner that has 10 to 15 years of experience with helping to set up and accelerate a sector on this domain. And there we see the match with the sort of the demand or what's needed in Kenya, what's being asked for in Kenya. Like, hey, how can we jointly accelerate this sector? Well, not wholly coincidentally, but we have an organization here that knows a lot about that. How you bring people together, how you come up with a plan for the whole sector, how you can help a nascent sector to accelerate, and also not in dairy or in poultry and horticulture, but in actual insects.
Yeah. Initially, when I was trying to find an answer in my own head, I thought, well, we're really good with waste reduction. So this is waste reduction. That's where I went. If I were taking this quiz, that's what I would have chosen that letter.
Yeah. I could have gone, but then I would have gone for the logistics.
Logistics.
Like the waste management, logistics, etc. Yeah. But it's less of an issue. Though that's just a funny. What I found quite funny also about this topic, waste management is a thing. Like, a lot of BSF farmers are struggling with getting enough organic waste in to actually feed to their flies. So what you now see happening at certain markets in Kenya is that actually people get sometimes even roused about who gets the waste from the market, which I find quite fascinating. I mean, and I'm exaggerating now a bit, but basically what you have is people fighting over waste.
Yes.
Which means it has definitely has a particular value to them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take us, shifting gears slightly, take us behind the scenes, if you would, behind the curtain of helping push a partnership along when it comes to In Feast.
Yeah.
Finally, the official title.
Yeah.
Flashing on the screen right now. What is this In Feast title? Because it looks like a party, but I think it stands for something very specific. So get into it.
It basically stands for insect farming in East Africa. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And we had to find a catchy project partnership title because that's what you do.
You don't want to be remembered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what does, especially now 2025 coming at least towards an end, starting 2026, what do you find yourself particularly busy with when it comes to In Feast? Here I'm looking more at the role of the partnership builder, but specifically for this context.
I think that in general, our role consists of a couple of things. It's being able to understand what the different partners or the initial partners want to work on and where they want to move towards. So really listening carefully, asking questions like, hey, but what does this mean? If you want to move there, what does it mean? Where do you want, what does that look like? So really understanding that. Then secondly is about finding the right organizations that have sort of the organizational skills that are needed to get where you want. And then together, sort of putting a dot on the horizon, say, hey, that's the destination, we need to go there together. And jointly figuring out, like, how do you get there? So it's really about getting people together, making sure to jointly agree on, well, the dot on the horizon, the point B, where you want to go towards from point A.
Yeah.
And then in that process, as I said, keeping all those frogs in that wheelbarrow to move from A to B. So I think that's a big part of our role. And that's why I said, like, I don't have to know too much about the context, the content, but I do need to know a bit, to come across a bit knowledgeable, so people don't think like, who is this moron sitting at our table? He doesn't know anything. Why do we even need him in the first place?
Right. Not that.
But that's really the stuff that we need to focus on, and making sure that everyone around that table is included, is heard, and that the right people are at the table, because that's also something that I learned, like, on paper, organizations can be totally well matched to what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the actual people around the table that want to move, that have the right mindset, it's never going to work. So then on paper, it might look fine and dandy, but it will break down completely in real life because one or two people are like, yeah, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah.
So that's also really an important component there. No, so it's really about having the right people on board, making sure that we set sort of a common agenda and a common objective that we want to achieve, how to get there. And also agreeing with each other, like, what are the signs of success? And from that point onwards, my role is really to keep everyone together, to make sure that we align our, hey, do we still think that this is the way to go? Should we adjust? Should we pivot? Because, and that's what I like about how we work. We don't do like 3-year project plans at NFP, because we truly believe the world is changing. And I think that the last few years we've seen, like, the world is changing at an enormous pace. I can right now that I'm going to do something in November 2027, but who knows?
Okay, right.
What we said, we want to put sort of that long-term objective down on paper, but then every year we'll see, like, is that still the case?
Yeah.
Align with the partners and then move further and make the plan for the upcoming year. So your objectives will be long-term, but the stuff that you actually do is really focused on next year. So that's also where I'm helping the partners, aligning with each other, coming up with the ideas, what to do next, and sort of keeping an eye on the prize, like, where do we want to move towards and where do we want to get?
Yeah. I noticed when you were even talking about some of the initial meetings, you mentioned that they were online, so there's that online aspect of being able to connect with people even though they can't come here.
Yeah.
But of course, I also know NFP, and I know the value, not just here, but in many places that we put on the being at an actual table. And then there's this added level that I would like to ask you about, which is the sort of, some people call them knowledge products, basically things that you can create together with all the partners that might be useful and might help share the knowledge. What is your approach, or at least the approach that you've seen that works well with this community, between the in-person, between the knowledge product? I mean, what do you think works well, or
Works well in what
to
way?
help the partnership to move forward, as you've said? I mean, what have you been working on? Let's say that. Has it been in-person meetings more the last year, or has it been more what's called knowledge products?
The thing is, it's difficult because we work internationally. So when I'm talking about this association, they're in Kenya, in Nairobi. One of the things that we do is, what I try to do as a partnership builder from the Netherlands is to make sure I almost always have sort of a right-hand person in country that understands what we do as NFP, that has a bit more of a content expertise than I do.
Sure.
In this case, for example, in Kenya, it's Laura Martinez, who we work with from Fair and Sustainable. And she's done research for the FAO for the FAO on this particular topic. She knows a lot of stuff about. She knows a lot about this stuff.
Yeah.
And she's sort of operationally in charge in Kenya. So that also allows her to really liaise with the partners there and the people there, because one of the critical elements of success of such a partnership is just really the trust. And that is difficult to build over a distance. So that really needs investment. And that's something that we experience time after time after time after time. It is a very, how do you call it? Intangible?
Yeah.
Untangible?
Oh, yeah. I like intangible.
Intangible thing.
Intangible. Tangible?
No, intangible, I would say. Yeah. No, but it's really hard to grasp, but it's super important, because otherwise you can get in situations where people will say A and do B. Okay. Because that needs to be there, that trust and the fact that you make sort of arrangements and appointments with each other and you really follow up on them. And that just needs constant investment. Yeah. And you build that by going there once in a while, but also in our case, like really taking on that facilitating role and putting them in the driver's seat, the partners in the driving seat. Like, what do you guys want to achieve? Yeah. I think those are very critical elements in building that trust. And the other thing, what I always find important, because you're talking about knowledge products, and they're super important because it allows you to disseminate knowledge in a type of way that reaches a lot of people. What I try to sort of keep in the minds of the partners that I work with is we're doing a lot of these internal things on process, partnership building and processes, etc. Yeah. In the end, it is really about on what you do in the outside world.
Yes.
Like, okay, let's not talk too much about how we're going to arrange this or that. No, in the end, you need to deliver results in the field, in practice, to actually make lives better, to well, in this case, make sure that alternative source for animal feed gets there, make sure that the soil gets better, etc., etc.
Yeah, and that's also partially why I get so interested in the kinds of, whether it's a toolkit or a publication or the approach sort of to the outside world. I mean, I guess that comes with the territory.
And it is, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's bullshit. I mean, it's super important stuff and super useful stuff to help you and to support you in getting where you want to go. But in the end, it's about the results, about really making that change, and not about delivering a whole lot of paper.
Yeah. But let's talk Turkey. 2026 is coming. I feel like the black soldier fly is getting all the attention. Is there an underdog insect on the way that's going to be also? Could you reveal something?
Oh man, when you said let's talk turkey, I was really thinking, oh, is he going there? Is he going there? No.
I don't know. You have knowledge about turkey, but no, I'm not going there.
Different turkey.
No, but is there? I mean, the black soldier fly gets all the press.
Yeah, true. And the other insects are complaining.
Who's your number two?
Actually, that's a very good question because I don't know. No,
All right.
and let's be honest, this is what we are focusing on right now. And I'm saying, and I can't say it enough, like I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
So what the second best thing is, I'll ask the people around me what the second best thing is. We get, some people are now mentioning crickets as an alternative source, but that, I mean, there's also some sort of continuous discussion going on, like, should we work on animals for feed or for food? Like, is it for human consumption or do we use it to feed cattle?
Yeah. It occurred to me when I was sort of doing research. It comes back, right? It's a topic in the outside world about the amount of meat that we consume on the planet and what to do about that in the long term for sustainability.
Yeah.
But here we arrive at the reality that, well, meat is currently being consumed and produced. So here's a way to do it more sustainably. Yeah. But it does eventually come to that.
Yeah, of course.
question.
And I think, I mean, it's not this is the solution and this is going to change the world. I mean, that's the whole food system thing. Like all these things are interacting and it should be sort of and all plugging into the same thing, making sure we get a more sustainable food system in the end, because that's definitely needed in this case. I think we can all agree on. Yeah. And how do you do that with respecting all the stakeholders involved? Like also making sure that if you get like changes into your food system, how do you still have a future for farmers in there? And that's the interesting thing, what we're also looking at, like how can you support these types of changes in those systems with respect to sustainability, to the environment, but also to the livelihoods within the value chain? Because a lot of people are depending on this as an income source. Yeah.
I was just also thinking, do we as a society or in other societies realize that the insect farmer is a farmer too? Because we often think of the other farmers, right? And they may not.
That is a good question, but that's also interesting because what you see is a lot of smallholder insect farmers in Kenya that often also have chickens, so they diversify. Okay. Like they do insect farming as part of their business. But then you have the larger businesses also in Kenya who solely focus on insect farming as such or BSF farming as such. Yeah. You even have it in Europe. Like the big organizations, there are a couple of big organizations in France, also really in the Northern Hemisphere that work on this product as a single focus, so to say. Yeah. But do we then, I mean, I'm not sure whether those organizations are or people are being regarded as farmers as such. I'm not sure. It's an interesting question. I think in Kenya, for example, some of them are, and maybe some of them aren't, because it's a new thing and it becomes very philosophical and interesting when you, for example, talk about animal welfare, which are discussions that are now ongoing in the Netherlands. Because if I'm not mistaken, but again, I'm not an expert here, the same regulations for animal welfare for insect go as for cows. But is that reasonable? Right. Yeah.
My own grandfather was a bees on the side kind of farmer. Oh yeah. He had the farm, he had land, and on the side there were bees. Kind of side project. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's you see that a lot. I mean, what I like is also what my family in Turkey is really from a small village, and you see the same stuff happening there. I mean. They're diversifying. They have a couple of acres of land. They have some cows. Yeah. They run like a bus service to the elementary school. Right. They have a little shop. So you have like 4, 5, 6 income streams. Yeah, and they're doing fine. Right. Yeah.
Right. Looking ahead, because the year is coming to a close, as is our time. But when you think about 2026, anything that you're looking forward to when it comes to the InFeast partnership?
Well, what I'm actually quite happy about is one, and that's also still looking a bit back, is we just went through the whole process of officially registering as the Association for Insect Farming and its products. So that is really a step in the whole professionalization process, in my view. And at the same time, as we speak, the association is now hosting, with our support, the first annual, well, we hope it's an annual event, but the first annual insect stakeholder event in Kenya. Started yesterday, is going to end in half an hour or so. So hopefully a lot of interesting things that will come out of there that will also fill the agenda for next year that we need to work on. We've asked stakeholders there to come up with ideas for a sector plan, for a marketing campaign to create awareness for insect-based products among, for example, feed millers or consumers, or just to get a bit more acquainted with the product and with the developments there. So that's really something that I'm looking forward on to building on that further, because we've set a lot of first steps, so to say, this year, and that promises a lot for next year. So that's something that we really want to focus on and build on.
Yep. And for those who might want to follow along or even get involved, what is our advice to them?
Well, of course, if you haven't yet, subscribe to our newsletter. And you can also follow the developments through NFP Connects, our community platform, where we try to provide as much updates on what's happening as possible through the social media posts. And if you still don't know enough, feel free to also get in touch with me and I'll help you along.
I'll include a link so that people could email you anytime.
Yes, but don't include my phone number, please.
No, not this time.
Because phones will be ringing after this.
Buzzing.
Ibrahim
Palas, thank you for joining us here. Welcome to the Beehive. And once again, anyone who's out there watching, and if you've enjoyed, feel free to subscribe. And of course, you can leave your feedback. I think on Spotify, it's in the form of stars. I think on YouTube, it's a thumb-shaped finger. And well, whatever way that you want to leave feedback, we appreciate it. And please join us next time for another edition of Welcome to the Beehive, produced by Abigail Kearns and Milan van den Bovenkamp. Bye.